All right, just one last time. Good evening. The time is 6:30. Today is Tuesday, June 27th. I'd like to call this regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning meeting to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Delory,
Here.
Mata, Onken.
Here.
Guerra,
Here.
Stiegel.
Here.
James.
Here.
Chase.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Item number 3, minutes. 3A, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting minutes for June 13th, 2023, regular meeting.
With a motion,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve item 3A.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner James. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 4, citizen comments. At this time, if any members of the public would like to speak, we invite you up now. Please limit your time to 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record, and please fill out a citizen comments form. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close citizen comments. We'll move on to item number 5, presentation. 5A, recognition of Alex Guerra for his years of service on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Set out.
Will Atkinson, Director of Planning for the record. This is it's kind of a bittersweet moment. Mr. Guerra has been on the commission, I believe, since 2020, and he's put a lot of time and effort in, and became the chair, and he's done a fantastic job being on the commission, also leading the commission and what have you. And we're quite frankly sad to see you leaving our community and what have you. So I don't really have much more to say, but if there's anything that you want to say, by all means, feel free to, and then I can present the plaque to you and take pictures and what have you as well.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. I've absolutely loved my time here with P&Z. Planning and Zoning Commission has been a great blessing to me. I'm thankful to the staff, to City Council, for everyone who has been a part of this. I have loved it. I wanted to finish out my time here, my term, but I did receive a job, and I will be moving closer to that job. Thank you to everyone here. Thank you, Debbie. You've been a rock. You've been a rock and an anchor for this team. Will, Mr. Atkinson, you have been what I see as the embodiment of Team Kyle. I think that is your biggest strength, and it has meant a lot. I'm thankful to the council, the mayor, for allowing me to be a part of this. Council members, both current and past, they've supported me throughout my time here. Council members, the current council, former council members Ellison, Shield, Rizzo, Villalobos, all played a role in me being able to serve. I'm thankful to former council member Rick Coach. He was an inspiration to me and really the reason that I got into volunteering in the city. I'm thankful to our commissioners, both past and present. Commissioners like former commissioners Shadmeyer, Christie, McCall, all played a big role in teaching me about serving on planning and zoning. I'm thankful to those that I serve with now. Thank you all for allowing me to lead. And thank you for just sticking with me and going through this with me. As you go forward, I believe you are a strong commission. There are times that I've questioned certain decisions by the city council, but there are certain things they've absolutely gotten right. One of them is I'm very happy with Verdunity. I know they will make a great comp plan. You guys will play a big role in that going forward. And I'm very thankful for the commissioners they have put on this commission. We have, the entire time I've been on planning and zoning, we have always had a commission that had great respect for one another. It's always been a time that we can disagree, but we can still just show a respect for each other and the roles that we serve. That has been probably the biggest blessing, and I hope we continue that going forward. I would encourage you all to keep working on that comp plan, to do the best you can. It will make a big impact in our city. I encourage you to continue to look at the code. Don't just wait for staff to bring things to you. You yourself, go look at the code, find ways we can improve things for our city. And also make sure you are always looking at the allowable uses chart. I think that's one of the most important documents that we may overlook quite often. When someone asks, I want to rezone this area to warehouse, that doesn't mean warehouses are necessarily going to go there. Know the allowable uses and update that chart when needed. But I have high hopes for you all. I will be still in the area, just not in the city limits. You will still see me quite often, and I wish you all the best. Thank you. Thank you all. Item number 6, consent agenda. We have items 6A and 6B on our consent agenda today. Would anyone like to make a motion?
With a motion,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve items 6A and 6B on the consent agenda.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner James. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner James, seconded by Commissioner DeLory. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7, consider and possible action. 7A, consider a request to modify the exterior facade on a restaurant building located at 18920 I-35 within the I-35 Overlay District. Tejas, Conditional Use Permit, CUP-23-0080. Ms. Sharp.
All right, Kayla Sharp, City Planner for the record. Today we have a CUP to modify the south facade of the Tejas. I don't know why that's cut off, so I apologize. The Tejas building at 18920 I-35. This is in the Dry River District. The modification is limited to painting a mural on the south facade. And so it will be on the south facade is what faces the P. Terry's drive-thru, which is adjacent to this site. And then here is the proposed rendering of what it will look like. They wanted to kind of honor the city and its history as well as the present with this mural. And so there's a little bit of a bigger image. The water tower is cut off, but the water tower is included on the left as well. It's kind of well known in the city. So yeah, the existing building materials and renderings are compliant with the I-35 overlay. Murals are permitted per city code and the I-35 overlay. It's important to note with this one that there's no commercial messaging within the mural, which would then maybe consider it a sign rather than a mural, and it's compliant with zoning regulations, and we recommend approval. Do I have any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
With a motion,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve item 7A.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner James. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner James, seconded by Commissioner Stiegel. Is there any discussion on that motion? Yes, sir. Commissioner James.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is really great as far as like addition to making areas like this unique looking and exciting and really matching the tone of our community. So I'm very excited for it.
That's great. Yes, sir.
Yes, I think it's quite distinctive and the kind of thing that I wish we could see more of. Of course, not in the detail of this particular mural, but certainly with these kinds of themes, or at least the attitude, and how bold it is, yet within the frame of that building. It's not something that necessarily is too much, but I really like seeing this, quite frankly.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7B, consider a request to modify the facade of approximately 3,000 square feet office building located at 309 Veterans Drive within the Veterans Drive overlay. Hernandez and Wooldridge LLC, Conditional Use Permit CUP-23-0081. Ms. Sharp.
All right, Kayla Sharp, city planner for the record. Get this loaded, maybe. All right, so this is one that we don't see too often with the Veterans Drive overlay. This one will be at 309 Veterans Drive. There is an existing building on the site, and so they are primarily modifying the existing building, doing a very small minor expansion. So it'll be just about 3,000 square feet total. They're taking down the existing siding, and the material will, the new material will be stucco, and there will be some appropriate architectural features added as detail on the building. If y'all remember, we've had a couple in the Veterans Drive overlay somewhat recently. There's not really any standards as far as materials go in the Veterans Drive overlay, but this one is compliant with that overlay and looks very nice. So here's just some kind of conceptual renderings. I did confirm with the applicant that it will be all stucco on the exterior. So we have that, and then kind of hard to see, but we do have a landscape plan. So yeah, this one is compliant and staff recommends approval.
Right.
Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Sharp. Are there any questions for staff? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Yes, sir.
Be approved as presented.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Delory. Is there a second for the motion?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Delory, seconded by Commissioner Onken. Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 7C, consider a request to construct a 2,900 square feet restaurant, on-site dining and drive-through, and site plan located within the I-35 overlay district, Burger King, 22431 IH35, conditional use permit CUP-23-0082. Ms. Sharp.
All right, last one for me for the night. Kayla Sharp, city planner for the record. If I can share this properly, sorry. So this will be for a drive-through in the I-35 overlay. This one was previously approved in May of 2022. So that has expired and they are now resubmitting. They have also recently submitted for a building permit, which will be valid for 6 months once it's issued. So they're coming back for their CUP again before they move forward with construction. So for this one, the materials will consist entirely of brick, and they have appropriate architectural features to accent the building. So if you can see there, it's pretty much all brick with some architectural features. And then we have the dumpster enclosure, which is all masonry, and then the site plan. So and staff recommends approval as it is compliant with the I-35 overlay.
Thank you. This is the same as the one that was approved last year?
Yes,
it didn't change?
they have not made any changes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Would anyone like to make a motion? I'll go ahead and motion to approve item number 7C. Would someone like to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by myself, seconded by Commissioner Stiegel. Is there any discussion on the motion? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the middle of a yes and no on this one, only for the fact of like, we basically had the same kind of request last time around, and then we extended it only for 6 months. I mean, I wonder if there's a reason that we're considering this one for 12 months versus the 6 months for building that we had last time.
Well, the difference in this one is it's not an extension. It already expired. They are reapplying. They've done whatever the process is for reapplying, correct?
Yes, they have reapplied, so this is an entirely new
Right.
permit.
It's entirely new, but it is the same that was presented to us before.
Yeah, they have not changed any of the plans that were submitted and approved last year. They are presenting those for approval this year, but it is a new permit.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? You saw the floor. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed. Motion passes. Item number 8, zoning. 8A, consider and make a recommendation to City Council regarding a request to rezone approximately 3.764 acres from retail service zoning RS, retail services, PUD, CBD2, Central Business District 2, and rezone approximately 23.36 acres from PUD CBD2 to PUD CBD2 for property located at 1717 North Burleson Street in Hayes County, Texas. World Place Properties LLC Z-23-0116. There is a public hearing for this item. I'm sorry? That's what we usually do, unless, do you want to, I'm fine if you want to present first. Okay, if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak, we do invite you up now. Again, please limit your time to 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record, and please fill out a citizen comments form. Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Mr. Atkinson.
Will Atkinson for the record, Director of Planning. Before you, we have the application of Z23-0016 for 1717 North Burleson Street, which is what we refer to as the Word Place PUD. This is a project that was originally entitled back in 2019, prior to the pandemic, with the intent of having a small town center on the Word property. This is just north of the roundabout at Marketplace in North Burleson, and they have, in its existing form, approximately 23 acres. They are both amending the PUD standards within the PUD itself, and also expanding the footprint of the zoning by a little over 3 acres as well. They recently purchased some additional property or are under contract as well. So over the years, of course, the big thing was the pandemic really put a delay on the project and what have you, as it was with a lot of projects actually. And so the applicant took the opportunity to make some revisions to it, or suggested revisions, and provide a more refined approach to what they are wanting to do. This has also gone before council, and they gave it a thumbs up to pursue an application back in December of last year. So before you is what you see. And just as a basic breakdown, currently zoned PUD and it's CBD2, with adjacent properties zoned RS to the south, and then R33 to the north, and then a couple PUDs to the west, with the Arena Man, you may remember one from earlier this year, to the southwest. It's vertical mixed use right at the roundabout, and then just north of that we have the Joe Brooks waterfront at Marketplace as well, which is also a PUD. So all three of these in conjunction, tying together, are going to form an urban street section, and just this massive, just massing of an awesome place to be. Again, they're adding just under 3.5 acres. CBD2 zoning is not mentioned in the core area transition zoning, but it is not spot zoning. I want to make sure y'all are aware of that. It is it is well within the built environment or the proposed zoning that's already in the area if it's right within it. And as a PUD, the CBD2 district is modified far beyond what it normally would be in downtown. So everything is actually built, when you see stuff coming out of the ground, get their COs and everything, it'll blend in just fine without much of an issue. So a couple of big ticket items on here. They're adding an additional 3.5 acres to the existing PUD. They're increasing the height of the commercial buildings to 5 stories. They are constructing and incorporating a portion of the Vibe Trail, which is approximately 0.3 miles, maybe a little bit more than that, from the I-35 right-of-way all the way over to Marketplace, which will then tie into the Arena Man project. And they're also improving North Burleson Street and adding trailhead parking for that as well. As a side note, there will be an associated development agreement that council will consider next week, which will include a dedication of a 13-acre city-owned park, which they're going to make the improvements to, which will have a playscape, a lot of natural trails, fitness center. They're going to do a lot of work removing invasive species and restoring wetlands and what have you. So there's a lot of really neat factors to this PUD, and we're super excited to bring it forward. And right here on the screen, you can see the concept plan. The mixed use will have the orange buildings. The residential, primarily residential, will be in the purple blocks there. The yellow line is the Vibe Trail, and then you got the natural trails over there as well. And then the reason why we're okay with showing the elevations is because these are going to be incorporated into the development agreement as well. And that's everything I have. And I also, the applicant is here as well, and I believe they are also going to have a presentation. But do you want to hold off questions until after they speak, or do you want to ask some questions now?
Yeah. Unless there are any objections, I'm going to go ahead and let the applicant speak now, and then we can discuss later. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Did you all get the PowerPoint that we sent over?
Yes.
Yeah, great, thanks. While he's doing that, Jeff Barton with Word Place Properties, 201 Marietta's Way. I live just outside the city limits, but my son and daughter-in-law and my grandkids live inside the city, run a business in Main Street. My mother, who's 88, lives inside the city on this place. We go back, in fact, 5 generations in Kyle. So we're really thrilled to be here to talk about Word Place. It's a labor of love for us. We are not typically real estate developers. In fact, I typically work for cities in urban planning all around Dallas, Houston, the Austin, San Antonio area. And in this project, we really wanted to try and put our money where our mouth was. My mom, who I mentioned is 88, wanted to leave something to her children besides just selling out to another Interstate 35 apartment complex. She and my dad used to run goats there, can no longer do that. So we're trying to turn this into a more urban environment. Thanks, and remind me how to advance it. Good. Well, if you just go to the next slide. As I said, we're really trying to make it a mixed-use project. It's been a long time coming for us. I'm here with my colleague and urban planner, Joey Ochoa. If you've got details, one of the two of us can answer questions, I'm sure. But Kayla, you saw this image. This is looking out a greenway to the north. So we call this the Bonton. That's the store that my granddad started here in Kyle, where the City Hall stands today when he came back from World War I. So the green space would be the Bonton, and then beyond that, you would see a public park. This is a mixed-use building that would have retail and restaurants on the ground floor and apartments above. Kayla? From our perspective, it's really the first project in Kyle that doesn't have mixed use and this kind of walkability added on after the fact, but is really integrated from the ground up with this kind of vertical and horizontal mixed use. It was our plan all along. It is going to be a pretty big economic driver. You heard Will mention, I say big economic driver. It is nothing like bringing one of these big boxes out here, but for this for the amount of property that we're talking about, 13 buildable acres, it's a much more dense, much more taxable investment in the city. We really wanted to see the connection between east and west, and we've worked closely with the city so that we're going to continue the Vibe Trail off our property onto some adjacent property, pay for that through an agreement with the city to connect the Vibe Trail underneath I-35 so that we get some real bike and pedestrian connection across east-west. We're right on the edge of 35, and hope to make it a real district, a destination for entertainment and retail, as well as a different style of living here in Kayla, sorry, should have mentioned. There are 17 acres of open space, 13 acres of a city park. So the new park at Plum Creek, which is beautiful that they're building on, there's an acre by comparison. So it's a pretty large investment. We will turn that over fully realized, fully built. We'll talk to you more about that in a moment. Instead of your typical walk-up apartments, these will be, you walk into a lobby with elevators going up. So a different style of living that becomes available in Kayla, thank you. I want to go through really briefly what it is and what's been done, give you some of those details. I know not all of those are directly relevant to the PUD, but we really like you all having a sense of what's going on there. In the next slide, you can see, oh, thanks. Here's the project between Marketplace and I-35. We actually have frontage on I-35, but it's not useful frontage because of the floodplain. There are two creeks on the property that you'll see in a moment. One all-weather, beautiful pecan trees on it, and one that's an ephemeral creek. So in the next slide, you see that today across the street, there's some industrial development. The flea market is just down the street. There's that RV park. The city closed off Burleson Road because it flooded frequently, and that's become a problem with vagrants and homeless folks and some vandalism. So we really want to remake that whole area. Again, the site plan that you saw earlier, the 13.5 acre park there to the north, the buildable acreage about 13 acres there to the south. You can see at the bottom of the screen, trailhead parking for people who want to visit the park that we'll build off-site in conjunction with the city. And then you can see the Vibe Trail that connects on down to 35 and connects into a nature trail system. So we'll have both the Vibe and nature trails with the potential for extending the Vibe on to the north. But in the short term, it becomes this key intersection of the north-south Vibe Trail in Kyle. Caleb? There's a number of uses. We incorporate green space and plazas throughout. Through this process, we've really come to realize in a visceral way that we didn't fully understand before how hard that is to finance and get banks to lend money on when you're not maximizing every square inch in buildings. But I think we're going to get there. So the drainage will be environmentally friendly, low-impact design features that clean the water beyond city requirements before it gets down to the creek. We'll talk to you a little bit more about what we're going to be doing with the creek as we move on. Kayla? There again, just to reiterate, the build and hold. This is an unusual project in a lot of ways. We're not a REIT, we're not a big real estate company, but we are trying to hold on to some of this. Most real estate companies are trying to build it, sell it, refinance it within 2 years. Everything in orange we plan to build and hold for the long term. And then, as you can see, there'll be my grandparents' historic farmhouse there in the center becomes a central square with a cafe there, single story with the old farmhouse. Then we'll have 5-story buildings around it with restaurants and retail, non-chain on those ground floors. Public art throughout and green space throughout. We'll be building a multiplex there, a little 5-plex. My mom is 88, still very actively involved in this project, and so we'll be building a place for her to live on site. Kayla? Then the other part will be sold off to others. We have very rigid design standards on what they can build in those places, but we'll see a variety of small to mid-rise buildings there. I think you'd like some courtyard housing, some missing middle housing. Caleb? Then on the park side, this gives you an idea of the 13.5 acres, and just want to elaborate very briefly. I think if you click, we should pop up. Yeah. So we're going to have a children's playground. We've been working with your Parks Department. You'll see we've got approval from the Parks Board. It'll be an unusual children's playground focused on nature like nothing that quite exists. That'll be right at the edge of the park, the transition between the urban space and the nature space. And then if you click one more time, we're also building an outdoor workout station with the City of Kyle. The City of Kyle got a grant for $25,000. We're donating the land and putting in $100,000 to build out this outdoor workout station right along the trail for folks. And in the next slide, you can see there'll also be nature trails running throughout. The final close-up here is of the creek, what it looks like right where you'll see this box. That's the creek in springtime there. So really beautiful place to go down and hike. Was a long-time dream of my grandmother who helped form the library here that be donated as a parkland for Kyle one day. Next. A little bit more about the playscape. Now, in addition to the playscape, we plan a little maze or labyrinth that would be out of native grasses that would be, 3 feet high, 2 feet high, so that parents could see over, but kids could run around in the maze, maybe see them from one of the restaurants there. Caitlin? That gives you a little other view of what some of the features of the park will look like and the labyrinth. Next is some of the natural areas. There's hundreds of species of plants and animals that exist out there today, a number of aquatic species, a number of natural species. We've done what I think no one else has done as a developer in Kyle, and create a natural area master plan for that. So we've gone in and, instead of hiding from those species, cataloged them all and produced a plan for the city for long-term riparian care of the creeks. As I mentioned, we're going to be incorporating art throughout. Word Place sounds like a funny name. That's my mother's maiden name. So we're leaning into that and embracing it. As you all have asked for nodes to come up with a theme, our theme here is really entertainment and literary. The Catherine Ann Porter House and the library were things that my family's been involved in. So a number of Texas writers have lived on this place over the years. So our theme is going to be the Word Place, and we'll have art that reflects that and tries to complement that. Like you, I really love the murals that we saw there. We plan to incorporate murals into this as well. Next. We traveled all over the country looking for inspiration for this. The Navy Yards north in DC, if you've ever been on that boardwalk, Northern Virginia, Celebration in Florida, particularly Addison. Some of the people, I think the city council just went up to look at Addison. Some of the people involved in that Addison circle actually work for us on the urban planning side. We went and spent a week in Carmel, Indiana to understand trail-oriented design up there. And we're excited about the prospects. I've probably talked too much already about family. It is a family project for us. The LLC is wholly owned by members of our family, multi-generational from 1 to 88. And this building, you actually have a plaque out there because it was once my granddad's dry goods store. So, that's my way of saying that we're really in it for the long run. A few glimpses at just what the elevations begin to look like here. On the next one, you'll see on one of the buildings, this is a sample of how the buildings will break out with offices, residences, a second floor bar and pool there that'll look out over the park. We've got a really great fine dining Cajun restaurant signed up for that. That'll be the ground floor and then a second floor bar. It's one this will be their second location. They're kind of in the broader area. Kayla? And then you can see these, some of the renderings. This is the Three Sisters building after my mom and 2 aunts. And then on the next one, you'll see another shot of that, then the plaza that has over to the left the historic farmhouse and 2 more buildings, the Lex and the Louise. Kayla? I'm going to fly through these. We have been at it for 5 years. Pandemic slowed us down. The city changed floodplain regulations, I think for good reason, with climate change in the middle of it. We had to redesign our package. You all approved it in 2019. We gave up all of the lots in the center of the creek. You've had some people come through here that fight the city on that and have argued to be developed there. We really thought in the long run that needed to be open space. Helped us move towards this park idea. We already had trails and parks. We doubled down on that. In 2021, we also met with some of your city council members and the former city manager about, again, doubling down even more, going up a little bit higher, creating this real urban density and incorporating the vibe trail into the project. So that's slowed us down a little bit, but it's been great to work with your staff, and we're back now a few interest points higher, but ready to move forward. We have completed a flood study that I think is now becoming your standard. We did a flood study there, paid for it, then we paid for a third-party outside engineering review just to ensure that we would be taking care of flood on site and also downstream. We've also completed this riparian study of both creeks, the natural area plan that I alluded to earlier. That's part of the development agreement being handed over to the city and will also inform how we develop the park. On the next one, we've got pedestrian studies and mobility studies on the project and the adjoining streets. And I think finally, traffic studies and parking studies, as I said, and on the last one, you'll see that we've also completed an economic study of the area that on the next two slides identifies jobs and economic benefit to the city with the project. So we're really, as you all know, being on P&Z, that kind of density in a small space really does help produce some good taxable base and economic benefits. Thanks for your patience. I think that's really the project. Would love to answer questions if you've got some.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant or for staff? Yes, sir.
I've got some questions. Thank you, Mr. Sutton, for this explanation. It's very impressive, and thank you for all the time and effort you put into. I just made some questions as you went through your briefing, so I'm just kind of going to ask you a few things there. Tell me a little bit, please, about your historic buildings there that you have there, the farmhouse and barn. Are those buildings going to be retained, or are they going to be kind of replaced with modern buildings? How are you going to do that?
We tried to salvage the historic house. We are not going to keep it. We are going to tear it down and adaptively use the materials. So we're going to keep all the stone, we're going to keep all the hardwood floors, and we're going to use almost the same site plan, but we'll open it up with some glass on one side. And honestly, it just trying to retrofit it because it had a lot of materials that are no longer safe. Trying to retrofit it for a commercial kitchen proved to be about twice as expensive as tearing it down, rebuilding it with those materials.
Okay. Okay.
The barn was, the house, by the way, goes back to the teens. My grandparents bought it in the 1920s. And then the barn was built about the same time. Again, we'll reuse the rock off the barn. It's not structurally stable enough to have commercial activity in it. So we'll tear down the barn but reuse the rock.
Okay. I'm wondering if you're having some kind of information about your family's historical ownership of the area, plaques or anything like that. Is this something that...
Thanks for asking.
Yeah,
we actually have a whole wayfinding program. So we will have along the trails wayfinding and signs that identify species and trees out there. There were actually no pecan trees when my granddad bought it. He planted 50 or 60 pecan trees out there. So we'll have some plaques about that. There's a lot of waterfowl, that sort of thing out there. We'll have plaques for that. We're going to have some public art that talks about literary what's happened in Kyle with different, it might surprise you, some of the writers that have lived in Kyle over the years. We'll have some about that. And then, a little bit about our family, because we would like people to gain some of that sense of place that's meant so much to us.
Yeah, I think that would be great and would add a lot. One of the things we're trying to do in our comprehensive plan is pull in the historical significance of ownership of such as families as yours. So that would be great. I see that you had a parking study done. Can you tell me a little bit about the parking there? What kind of parking ratios do we have for residents, and what's available for visitors?
Yes, there's going to be there are several issues with parking. We want to be sure that we've got enough parking for the mixed use component and restaurants at peak hour, and then want parking for the residences, but also for people who can visit the trail independently. And we would like to have some things like farmers markets, but also movie nights and that sort of thing out on those green spaces. So that's one of the reasons that we're building off-site parking across Burleson. And then, as I think Will alluded to, we're taking Burleson Street and we're going to build parking on both sides of all the way up and down Burleson to handle overflow. Then we tried very hard to stay away from big parking lots. That was important to us to give a little bit more street presence. So all of the streets incorporate parking in the way that we do here in downtown Kyle, off both head-in parking off both sides. And then we have a couple of small parking lots for the residential buildings. So all of those residential buildings will have at least one space, and we'll have 1.5 to 2 spaces per unit right by the building. And then, as you would in a city, some of them are going to have to walk a little ways.
Okay, thank you. On the park space, I've got a question for Mr. Atkinson. So was City Parks and Rec involved in the development? Did they have interaction with the park plans as they were developed? And was there any comment from them?
I can answer the first questions, not the comment about it. But yes, it went to them twice. As I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, it went to them the first time with the original document, and then as revisions were made in the middle of the pandemic and post-pandemic now, it went back to them just so they were more of a just making sure we're still on the right track kind of idea. And then they developed the idea of dedicating that park, the 13 acres, to the city, and the Parks Board ultimately said yes.
Okay.
So.
The only thing I would elaborate on is Will's exactly right that there have been a couple of recent votes at Parks Board, but we've actually been to Parks Board 4 or maybe 5 times. We've actually walked the whole site with your Parks Director and 2 of our employees, which is one of the ways that we came up with the trails. We were talking about what to do with the plan, and they walked it and were surprised at the year-round water and the trees, and asked if we'd consider donating it to the city, which we thought was a great idea.
Okay.
We've been, I think, either 2 or 3 votes at the Parks Board, all of them unanimous in support, including one recently, as Will said, after we had refined this, tweaked it, and went back just for, I think it wasn't required by ordinance, but just to go back to make sure they still felt good about it.
Okay. The park area, how much of that is in floodplain? Is there a large
Most of it is in the floodplain. Right. Almost about a pretty large amount was outside the floodplain, and there was a pending argument that we could reclaim that, but it just seemed unwise. We've seen it flood there, and the water does seem to be getting worse as we get more impervious cover upstream and with more extreme weather events. So rather than trying to reclaim any of that in the center, we reclaimed a little bit out of the edge, dedicated all of that to park and open space.
Is it the intention to have the park dog-friendly?
It is we're going to build it that way. And I guess that's really up to the Parks Department or you all, but we'll be turning it over to the city. But we imagine it that way. I'll put it that way.
Okay. Thanks.
We're going to have a community garden on the edge of the park, and then plan to have a little park place where you can run your dogs for residents. Okay.
My last question. One of the mixed-use building has a bar and pool deck. What's a pool deck? Is that like a deck that looks like it would be around a pool? Or
yes. Okay. Because we're trying to create a more urban environment, rather than having a typical, say, apartment pool, out in the middle of the quad or the park, the pool for all the residents is up on the 2nd floor. Oh. And it's so there's a pool and an area for residents, but then designed into that 2nd floor is also this bar that's for the downstairs Cajun and French food restaurant. So you could, the idea is, if some of you've been to, trying to think of the name of the hotel in Austin that's got that, but so you could be eating, but kind of look at water, look out over the park, or look at the pool, or dip your toes in the pool while you had a glass of tea,
Might
or
you be
whatever you
talking about
chose.
the Zaza?
Pardon?
The Hotel Zaza?
Yeah, hotel, yeah.
Okay.
So that's the idea. Again, I think from our perspective, we're trying to create, some culture or some cultural possibilities that don't exist at very many developments right now.
That's great. Thanks for answering my questions. That's all I
Absolutely.
have.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant or for staff?
Yes, I've got several.
Yes, sir.
And I guess I'll start with more environmental concerns, both water on the site and then also just some features that you're seeking in this development standards package that you've put together.
Sure.
So you're going to manage bioswales, use bioswales, rain gardens, and so forth to mitigate the runoff.
Yes.
So there's going to be a lot of impervious ground there. Can your engineer that you cited here, can he put together something on the ground that in fact will provide enough by way of bioswales and other features to actually keep runoff, as you probably reduce silt, but certainly other contaminants? Is that something you can confidently?
I am confident. We've had a lot of discussion about it, and it's been designed not just by our engineer, but by our landscape architects, really hand in glove. Those landscape architects are used by environmental groups all over the state. Hill Country Alliance, it's the Siglo group. So, and they're partnered with a landscape architect who's a professor of landscape architecture at the University of Texas. So they've worked on everything from the LBJ Library to Harbinger Park to projects for the Hill Country Alliance. So it's something we take very seriously. Our engineer is going to have to seal that. There are a few places that will have underground pipe because we can't manage the flow, but everywhere we can, we want it to be daylighted flow because it begins to teach people about the fact that the water doesn't just disappear. It runs from the development down to the creek, and then it'll have bioswales and those kinds of other green or LID features to both do some silt and chemical removal and slow down the water as it goes for erosion control.
Good. I like to see something that's permaculture based that's in this kind of environment.
We will have, in fact, two different kinds of planting. Don't mean to nerd out on you. We'll have two different kinds of plantings. We'll have some street trees in parts of the district, but in those bioswales, then we'll have very specific plantings that do well with water and with sediment removal.
Now, regarding trees on the right-of-way, that you'd planned the 2-inch caliber trees every 100 feet?
I think the minimum that we are required to do under the PUD is 2-inch, but we do not plan 2-inch. We plan significantly larger.
And at a distance of 100 feet, have you worked that out?
Yes, I will say that again, that's going to be partly a function of budget. There are a lot of existing trees out there that we'll be saving. There's a pecan grove that we'll be saving. So we hope to have them closer than 100 feet, but we are required to have them no more than 100 feet.
Okay. Some more issues that have to deal with not the natural environment, but nevertheless the environment, the lived environment. And that is that there's the idea of, on the different right-of-ways allowing trash pickup, including in the fire lanes, it said in this agreement. And I don't think that that's going to work, obviously. Here in the
I think it's referring just to getting back to the back of some of those sorry for the jargon, mixed-use buildings. One of the challenges that we have is designing buildings that are visible on all three sides, or all four sides. Typically in the city, you're seeing stuff that backs up to an alley or, faces a front street, and behind it is all the kind of ugly stuff. So, because all the buildings are meant to be able to be walked around and visible from either marketplace or interior, then we've had to go to some great lengths to figure out where to put those dumpsters. So there are a few private drives that really your public works didn't want to take on as a city street that also serve as fire lanes, and there'll be a dumpster. It won't be in the street. It'll be set back up off the street, screened.
Okay. Well, then perhaps this would be useful to use different language or more detailed language to describe that, because it rang a bell quickly just reading, first read through.
I'd have to glance back at it, but, you know,
Yeah.
we're glad to make that commitment. I think that commitment's reflected also in the design guidelines that we've
I
got.
would agree generally. The shipping containers, the conceptual
Yes.
piece behind that.
On the square, we're not sure that we will do this, to be honest. We have a tenant that's does bicycle rentals, and they wanted to be right on the Vibe Trail. And they have some shipping containers that are painted and like have murals on them, and at that kind of offset shipping container. So we thought it was pretty attractive. We liked the idea. I think it would fit on that Vibe Trail. And so I think your staff asked for a limitation on those to make sure you weren't going to just plop those down everywhere. And not only do we not want to, but the banks, which I believe are going to own one of my grandchildren, would not let us do that either, I think so. But more likely so we'll either have that or we'll have like a freestanding building, small building, 600 or 800 feet. If you've been to Legacy West up in the Plano area or some of these nicer developments, sometimes there's some smaller freestanding buildings around a plaza.
Thank you. Also noted antennas and broadcast masts 20 feet above the roof line. What's the thought with that?
Because we're going to be pretty dense, I don't know about you all, but particularly I just switched to T-Mobile, and I'm sure they're great folks, but I find lots of dead spots in Kyle. We're going to have a lot of people relying on mobile service there, so we really want to have some, if we can, we want to have some on-site antennas to ensure that despite the buildings down in the green spaces, that whether you're visiting or a resident, that you can still get service.
So, thank you. That makes sense a great deal. But roof-mounted signs, I saw in your drawings that the word is on top of one of the buildings. And is that the sort of sign you're talking about, putting on top?
Yes. Ideally, I think we've tentatively planned it to be something like a neon sign that kind of reinforces that sense of being in a different place.
Okay. Now, this gets into the weeds a little bit more, but regarding parking, as an example, you're going to have a property owners association.
We are.
And other than parking, I'm really interested in what that governs, because that's a city within a city, so to speak.
It is. So the property owner association in our case will be a large member of that property owner association, but it will maintain the open spaces that aren't owned by the city. So the city will own the park, but we have a number of green spaces inside the development itself. So the property owner association will govern those and pay for the upkeep of those.
Okay, so if I understood correctly, then you would be taking parts of this parcel and subdividing it, or having lease pads?
That's correct. We'll subdivide it. We have a plat pending as well.
Okay, so then the members of the POA would be drawn from that group, and they would be beholden by a covenant.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we will be that will include us. We will continue to own several lots, so that will include us, and we'll represent our tenants and be responsible for their share. And then the purchasers of those lots will also be members of the HOA, or it won't be an HOA, the POA.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I do have a question for staff to further dispel my ignorance about these matters, because I've come in sort of halfway through this process, of course. But is this PUD standards document, is that the previously considered and approved, or?
Let me look at Will Atkinson for the record. Let me look at the. All right, so there's the one labeled PUD. If you're on the specific agenda item, the one that's labeled PUD standards existing ordinance is the existing one. And then the proposed ordinance, which is the third item on the attachments, is the new one that we're looking at tonight.
The new one, and so these would be new new standards, in fact.
Yes, sir.
So here's where my deepest ignorance comes from. It's on page 18, Article 10, Section 2B, site plan review standards, and the Director of Planning shall administratively approve a site within 30 days if such a site plan complies with the regulating plan and conforms to the standards set forth in the code in the City of Kyle Code or ordinances. A site plan is not required to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. Is that already in force?
Yes, site plans with the exception of one zoning district in the Plum Creek PUD. All of them are already approved by and reviewed by city staff between planning, if there's residential, parks, engineering, public works.
But it doesn't take another pass past us or council?
No, sir. If there's, the buildings probably will be through a conditional use permit, but that's pretty normal because it falls within the I-35 overlay. And those buildings will also be, at least the primary ones would be memorialized in the associated development agreement that council will be considering as well.
Okay, so the idea then is with the council meeting next week or whenever would approve all of this based on partly on our recommendation, but they would approve this. And from there on out, it would be city staff that's taking responsibility for the project.
For the most, well, yes, yeah, we'll be processing the permits from plating, site development, conditional use permits, building permits. You will see preliminary plans from a subdivision standpoint and the final plats, of course. And you'll see the site development permits on a per lot basis whenever as associated with conditional use permits.
Okay. I'd like to just say, in general, I really appreciate the diligence you've brought to this project, the sense of place, the sense of historic place, but also the current place that's developing. Very much appreciate that. And I just would say, and this is my own personal statement, of course, but that the people with whom you work have as much vision and integrity as you seem to have, because I think that's very important, and I hope that you're able to find those people.
Thank you. And we're certainly determined to.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
This is a much smaller question, but it intrigued me after. It's a follow-up to the question about dogs being allowed in. You said that you had cataloged all of the species of things that are on that.
We have.
Are any of those poisonous to pet animals?
Joey, do you know offhand? I would guess so, but I don't know, to be honest.
Would you be amenable in the future to putting up a sign that lets people know if things are poisonous to their pets, just like
Absolutely. In fact, I'm glad to talk to Lance. I've looked through the whole list, and I didn't see anything that rings a bell besides poison ivy. But I think that's a great question, and we'll be glad to talk to our landscape guys about putting something up about that.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff or for the applicant? Yes, ma'am.
Hey, thank you. I have a quick question. I think it's for staff, but y'all can tell me if that's not the case. I'm looking at the key changes to the PUD, Section 3A and Section 4. Density calculations are accounted for on a project-wide basis. What is the change? What did it used to be? Did it used to be on an acre by acre basis or a parcel by parcel basis? And
I had this conversation with Joey just the other week. And so as I'm looking at the backup material, I realized I uploaded the wrong document from this one that says redlined. So I'm gonna go by memory, and I'm gonna probably need some correction. The originally it was broken into two components. There was a portion of it, and it was supposed to be limited to 80% impervious cover, and then another portion of it was supposed to be 100%. And I think it was residential versus commercial was the difference. But after further discussion with them, we kind of mutually agreed upon that the CBD2 zoning district at its base level, as you have in downtown, it already allows 100% impervious cover. Now, But at the same time, you still have to account for any impervious cover added per the post-Harvey rainfall totals, which is a really high number. You have to really account for it. And working with our engineering department with this project and making sure that they are okay with it from a stormwater perspective and also the water quality perspective, this project's going to account for that. So it's just going to be by what it already is in the end, the impervious cover. It's going to be 100%. So
I was thinking about buildable units or units per buildable acre from that angle. Is that part of the density calculation?
it is, but I guess it depends on, I guess if you don't mind refining your question a little bit.
Yeah. So we're saying maximum limit of 350 residential units with an average of 28 units per buildable acre. So if I hop over just a moment to the other document, let me search density. It also states in the document that for regulatory purposes, density within the PUD, where's the end of the parentheses? It just keeps going. Hang on. Any allotments, calculations, or limitations on density shall be calculated holistically, in other words, with consideration of the planned buildings and density for the entire PUD, and shall not be applied to one property, building, or subsection. So I guess what my concern is, on the overall drawing, the concept plan, there's the little caveat that single-family residential is allowed, and we're asking to add another layer onto the mixed-use buildings. So by building those up, you could potentially give developers the leeway to do more single-family building in the rest of the spaces that Jeff Barton's family does not own or take care of. And so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly before we approve it, so that everyone understands what the implications of that could be down the road. Did that make more sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, well,
no,
I can address some of that if you'd like.
So you're on the right track. I'm not arguing that. It is calculated at around 28 units per buildable acre across the PUD. That's essentially if you look at the R-3 zoning district, the 3-story walk-up garden style, that's the same density, right? It's not going to be that from a built environment, but whenever on a per lot basis stuff is submitted, that's going to be one of the components that we have to account for. They're going to have to plan for what is the calculation for the specific project and how it affects the overall density per the entire PUD. We're going to require that for in the permit side. From a outside of the orange areas that you saw up on the screen where they're going to build and hold those developments, there is flexibility for different types of missing middle housing. So some of it could be single family detached, some of it attached, townhomes, and what have you. But that's also to account for a good sweet spot from a built environment versus what the market may shift in the future that we just don't know when it's going to happen, when it does happen, because the market always changes. So we want to be able to account for an appropriate small town center per the code, but also be able to have just enough flexibility to where we can have good missing middle as appropriate along the fringes. It's probably a really long-winded explanation, but.
Well, I certainly agree with everything Will said, and I'll just add this from our perspective. As we really got into looking at it, there's one additional component. Because we have so much green space, this is really atypical. One of the challenges for this, for your staff and for us, is there aren't any ordinances in Kyle or in most places that really address this kind of development. So we run into lots of unusual little procedures as we try to move forward. We've got a lot of plazas and green space built in, which you don't often see, or they're cut apart into something else. Here, if we have these standalone plazas that we want to preserve no matter what, so we were faced with how do we define these lots and how much you can build on that lot when we're giving up a lot of ground to green space, and when the buyers will come in. So it was important to us to have that flexibility across lot lines, so that we're not trying to define, well, you can have 40 units here, and does that include the green space or not? How do you figure that into the calculation of each lot? That became just inordinately complicated. So one of the things we really wanted to do was talk about, well, let's talk about appropriate density for the whole site. And as Will said, within the framework of the PUD and the site plans that you've seen, how do we make that work? Does that answer your question?
I think so. This is uncharted territory for me as well. So I think I understand enough of what y'all are saying. Thank you.
Well, sorry I wasn't clear.
Are there any other questions for staff or for the applicant? All right, would anyone like to make a motion for item 8A?
With the motion,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve item 8A.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner James, seconded by Commissioner Stiegel, that we make a recommendation to City Council approving item 8A. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
So I had made a motion. I just want to say that, yeah, I think this is far and beyond some of the things that we have seen in the city. That's really impressive. It's also allowed us to have a lot more questions about it. But I think even after those questions, I still see this as what I think is closer to the use of MXD than we have seen in a very, very, very long time. And I hope it sets the standard for what we are going to see in the future, because getting the way MXD has been used before to this is a whole different ballgame. It allows it to be used in a way that is effective, not just as like city blocks as we might see in some of the fraternity things, but to fit in with some of the suburban environment we also have in the city. I think it's really important that we have this kind of project. And not only that, but there is someone who is a lifelong member of Kyle, and whose family is a lifelong member of Kyle, willing to have a project that doesn't just go to another company or go to another developer, but stays in our community, I think is a really, really, really important thing. You don't see that in a lot of places.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion?
I would just support what Commissioner James said. Very much, this is an outstanding project and it has great potential. Again, I hope you find very good partners to work with who get it and who also honor the relationship with the city, between them and the city, and with you as well. And if I may make a play on words here, literally, I hope the word becomes the word as to what we want in this kind of development.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the motion? Yes, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for what you've done. This is a type of property it'd be very easy just to cash in with, but your love for the project, your love for the city is really going to shine through, and we are all the better for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you for your support and also for the job you do. We appreciate it.
Sir, thank you. Moving on to item number 9, general discussion. 9A, discussion only regarding Planning and Zoning Commission requests for future agenda items. Are there any agenda items any commissioners would like to see on a future, any items you'd like to see on a future agenda? Okay, we will move on to item number 10, 10A, staff report. Staff report by William Atkinson, Director of Planning.
So the biggest thing that I have is that we are considering for the next meeting to possibly have elections for chair and vice chair in July. So just something to be aware of as we're moving forward. We're going to need to do that pretty quickly. And as an extension of that, we're also going to be looking at coordinating with the administration and city council as it relates to filling the 2 vacancies that we're going to have with Mr. Guerra and Mr. Chase. So just so y'all are aware. That's it primarily. So.
Thank you. All right, takes us to item number 11, adjournment. I'd like to make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by myself, seconded by Commissioner James. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. We are adjourned.